Hello, I am Lorinda, and we are Community EarMark. If you just tuned in, that's good. Pull up a chair, come join us. We're going to be talking about a disease that's affecting many women in the world. We would like for you to have the opportunity to take in some knowledge, and maybe you can save yourself and others. But before we get started, I would like to introduce our guest, Stephanie St. James, best known as her role in Squeak and Oprah Winfrey Presents the Color Purple musical. Also nominated for NAACP Theater Award for Best Supporting Artist. You may have actually seen her at the Orpheum in San Francisco. Hello, Stephanie St. James.
Hi, Lorinda.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm wonderful. I want to thank you for allowing Community EarMark to do this interview about this powerful disease that you're going to share with us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to share with the community about endometriosis.
Now tell me, what have you been doing with this knowledge in the past, and what have you been doing with it presently, and what do you plan on doing with it in the future?
Okay, well, endometriosis, first of all, is a disease that afflicts more women worldwide than breast cancer. Over 176 million women across the world have been diagnosed and suffer with this disease, yet most people have not even ever heard of it. Women often go misdiagnosed. They usually don't find out that they are diagnosed with the disease until very late stages, when they're in a stage 4, stage 5. Oftentimes doctors have a tendency to think that women are a little bit over dramatic, and so they can be overlooked. So I myself suffer from endometriosis. I was diagnosed in 2003 after over a decade of suffering with the symptoms. I was traveling internationally and within the US with different Broadway musicals, and would find myself in emergency rooms across the country, and doctors just were telling me to take a Tylenol, that I would be okay. And luckily in 2003, I ended up in the arms of a really great ER doctor, and my brother happened to be with me, and he knew someone who had a daughter who had just had surgery for endo. So he asked the ER doctor if it was possible, if that was what I was suffering from. So that's sort of where my journey began with the disease. I started looking into it. I'd never heard of it.
Wow.
Started looking into it, started doing my research, found a doctor, a surgeon that specified in this particular disease, and had my first laparoscopic procedure in 2003. A laparoscopic procedure is the only way that women can be officially diagnosed with endometriosis. And what that is when the surgeons go in through the belly button with a camera, and they look into the reproductive system and other areas in the bodies to see if the disease is present.
Something like this right here that I'm looking at?
Exactly.
Wow.
So what endometriosis is a disease that initially begins to affect the reproductive area, giving women symptoms such as painful periods, irregular periods, problems with their bowel movements such as constipation, lower back pain, pain when having sex, but endo doesn't stay just to the reproductive area. It is known to grow as far as to the brain, like cancer. It can affect the lungs, it can affect the kidneys, and it's sort of the medical community. Doctors really aren't knowledgeable about endo. It's a disease that afflicts each woman in a different way, so it's a very tricky disease to sort of diagnose and to treat. Right now there is no cure. There's only research and treatment. And oftentimes treatment is through giving women a hysterectomy, which is not the answer, because the disease grows past the reproductive system.
And is that why they had this one woman commit suicide in Indiana?
Yes. You know, so many women suffer in silence with endometriosis, and they begin to feel almost inhuman, you know, going from emergency room to emergency room, doctor to doctor. Oftentimes, stories that you'll find, you know, I receive hundreds, if not thousands of letters every year from women around the world telling me their story. And the story kind of has the same pattern, which is I started suffering at a young age. Doctors told me I'd be fine, and I know my body, I know that I'm not okay, and now I'm on my 10th, 11th, 12th surgery, or I've had a hysterectomy, or I've been treated with, addictive pain medication and narcotics, or I've been shot into menopause at an early age. Sometimes women go and they give them Lupron treatments, which puts women in menopause, and some of these women are as young as 18, 19 years old and suffering symptoms of menopause in order to try to dormant the disease. So what happens is when your body is being used kind of like a lab rat or a lab monkey, because doctors don't really understand endometriosis, women begin to feel powerless and women begin to feel as though hopeless, and oftentimes end up taking their own lives.
Wow, so this disease is a tragic disease.
It's a very tragic disease. It's the #1 disease for infertility in women. So if you're a woman in this community and you're having a hard time getting pregnant, it's possible that you have endometriosis. A lot of women don't know that. So oftentimes women that are having a hard time conceiving, that's another way that they find out that they have endometriosis. And usually, like I said, most women aren't diagnosed until they're already in stage 4 or stage 5. And by that time, they're no longer fertile and no longer able to have children.
So at stage 4 and 5, they're kind of dealing with the disease without a cure.
Disease without a cure. Even if you're in a stage 1 endo, you can have stage 1 endo and have the symptoms of a woman that has stage 5 endo. Or you can have stage 5 endo and have very little symptoms and very little pain at all. And that's what makes it so confusing for the medical community, is that they don't know how to treat women because each case is so different. Each case is identified to that particular individual, although there is a common thread that sort of ties in the story together, but each woman is very different from the other.
Wow, that's why you use that word, tricky.
It's a tricky disease. It's a very tricky disease, and there's only a few specialists in the world that specialize in endometriosis surgeries, and they're all male. I think there's only one endometriosis excision surgeon that's a female. So you could see how that would be a little hard as a woman, as a man, for a man to identify with a woman who's coming in and saying, I'm having this horrific pain, a pain that feels like your insides are being ripped out of you, a pain that feels like you're being stabbed over and over again. It's a very painful disease physically, and very tragic emotionally and spiritually.
Now, even though you have this disease yourself, what inspired you to want to be an advocate about endometriosis?
The reason why I decided to start advocating and raising awareness is because nobody else was. And I had suffered for over a decade myself, and when I was finally diagnosed, I was diagnosed at a stage 4. But a whole decade had gone by that I could have been diagnosed in the early stages had I known what it was. Had someone been out there talking about endometriosis, had a doctor taken the time to listen to me and listen to my symptoms and not pass me off as maybe being a little over dramatic, then maybe I would have gotten the treatment that I needed. So I saw it as an opportunity because I am in the public eye as far as my acting career and singing and in the arts. I had a platform and I wanted to use it to help other people like myself. So that's why.
Good. Well, we're glad that you become an advocate for this disease.
Thank you.
Now tell us a little bit more about your acting and your teaching and your instructing others how to dance, such as yourself, and with your studio.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned earlier, most people know me from my role in Oprah Winfrey's The Color Purple, but I've had a career in the entertainment industry for over 30 years. Actually began here locally in the Bay Area. At Contra Costa Community Theater is where I first started. As a small child, I was in Annie, and I always knew that I wanted to be a performer, and I always wanted to go to New York and be on Broadway. So eventually I made my way to New York City and started booking work professionally as an actress, and traveled all through Japan and all through Europe and all across the US, performing in these different musicals, and then living in LA and working in the TV and film industry and commercial industry. And in 2010, when I left The Color Purple, actually it was 2009, when I left The Color Purple, I had already had 2 surgeries for my endometriosis, and my endo kept coming back. So I decided to sort of take a break from the industry and give opportunities to people like myself, maybe who were from a small town and didn't know how to get into the entertainment business. And I opened up an acting studio in Miami, Florida. And the acting studio is called the St. James Acting Studio. It's in Miami, Florida, based in Miami, Florida. And there I teach people how to break into the entertainment industry. I teach them about the business. I also teach them the skills of acting and the skills of performing on stage in musical theater and voiceovers and commercials and things like that.
Incredible, incredible. You're just a well-rounded entertainer.
I guess you could say that. I guess you could say that,
wow. Well, what do you plan on with this awareness that you're helping women understand this disease called endometriosis? You're shedding light on that.
Exactly.
Thank you for doing that. What will you be able to do for the women in the Berkeley community that are listening in to our interview?
Well, what I'm hoping to do for the women of the Berkeley community, as well as women internationally and here on a national level, is I recently just had a 3rd surgery for endometriosis in April in New York City, and that surgery went very wrong. I had several complications and ended up being hospitalized off and on for 3 months. And my one surgery that was supposed to leave me in the hospital for possibly 5 days turned into 4 major surgeries. Earlier I had mentioned the way to get diagnosed with endo is through a laparoscopic procedure where they go in through the belly button. So that's the procedure that I was having for the 3rd time. Because I had so many complications, ultimately in the end, I ended up getting cut wide open on my 4th surgery, leaving me with a scar over a foot long. And because of my experience and everything that I went through, I've made it my duty and my commitment to women to make sure that I get this word out there about endometriosis. So what I'm doing next is I'm currently in the beginning stages of starting to film a documentary on endo and hoping to submit it into film festivals throughout the country and worldwide so that we can get the word out there about the disease. And it's going to tell the story, my story, as well as the story of 176 million women who don't have a voice, and the story of the woman in Indiana who will remain nameless for now that took her life because of endo. So.
And I understood that you personally knew that young lady, right?
No, I didn't know her, but I did speak with her mother actually for the first time this past week, and that was, you know, very tragic and very sad, and I made a commitment to her mom that the world was going to know her daughter's story and know about the disease, and that her daughter's life was not going to just be by the wayside, you know, that when her daughter took her life and her mom went to the local media, they told her that the story wasn't newsworthy enough. And I think that any disease that afflicts 170 million women across the world is definitely newsworthy enough. So that's why I'm taking a step back from teaching and focusing on the documentary, and I'm hoping to get the support of the local community because I am originally from the Bay Area. We are really going to need the support of the Berkeley community as well as the entire Bay Area, North Bay, South Bay, and East Bay, to get our funding going, get the word out there, and get this done.
Wonderful. Well, we definitely appreciate you driving this disease to the forefront and piloting that so every woman that's out there listening or that haven't been introduced to this disease will know about it. We thank you for bringing that to Berkeley community awareness.
You're very welcome.
And we also would like for you, if after you thought about it, to come back to the show and maybe we can have a part 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
And allow the interviewers to maybe contact you and maybe get more information about endometriosis?
Absolutely. I would love that. I get, as I was driving out here with my husband from the North Bay, my Twitter on my phone was blowing up, from women all over the world. I said that I was going to be coming to do this interview with you. I tweet every day to endo sufferers around the world, and wow. We call each other endo sisters. And I'm starting this campaign where, they have a campaign that's out there where they say, let's fight like a girl. And I don't feel like we should fight like a girl. I feel like we should fight like warriors, because it takes a warrior type of spirit to survive this type of disease. So every day I'm always tweeting. I tweet with women directly that are in the hospital, that are having surgeries, that are going through IVF, that are going through hormone treatments, that have just had hysterectomies, that women that can't get out of bed, that have been in bed for days and months at a time. I have dialogues with them directly, trying to support them and just be there for them. So, Twitter was
Wonderful.
Blowing up today as we came here. So I hope that women will reach out to me on Twitter or Facebook, and if they feel that they're suffering with the symptoms, and that way I can give them a road to go down on how to begin to heal themselves and get diagnosed.
Okay. Well, why don't you give them your contact information?
So my contact information...
It'll be better coming out of your mouth.
My contact information is actually, the best way is through social media, which is twitter.com/Ms. St. James, which is MSSTJAMES, or facebook.com/TheRealStephanie St. James. You can also just Google Stephanie St. James and my information will pop up. And you can friend me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. I will follow you back. And if you reach out to me, you will get an answer. So, I look forward to hearing from women. I love when I get messages on Facebook from women that say, it's because of you that I was able to get diagnosed with my early stages of endo, or even my late stages of endo, and just put a name to my symptoms. I love hearing that, I love knowing that it's helping people, that I'm helping people.
Well, you definitely will get a follow-up status on how you touched the Berkeley community. And we definitely want to thank you for shedding light on this disease. And like I mentioned earlier, there will be a part 2. If you only got just a little bit of the information this evening, that's okay. There will be a part 2, and we're going to invite Stephanie St. James to come back and join us. At this time, I want to thank you, Stephanie St. James, for opening your heart to all of us and bringing awareness not only to myself, but the ones here in this room with us and all the ones that are tuned in. And at this time, I want to thank all the ones that help us tonight, David, Joe, Samuel McGillberry, and Clark Kent, and our live guests tonight. And I want to also give out a shout out to the Berkeley Community Media for allowing Community EarMark to use their facility for this programming. And we want to thank you for joining us. Good night.